Hey everybody, this is Prompt and Circumstance. My name's David,
And I'm Ilan.
and today we are going to be talking about setting up an agent team in OpenClaw.
Super excited to show you how this works.
Hey Ilan, so you've been working with OpenClaw for quite a bit, and you've learned a bit more since our previous episode on just an intro to OpenClaw. I would love to hear more about what you've been doing.
Absolutely. So today I want to talk to you about agent teams. And this is something that is super interesting and is not all that useful when you first start tools like OpenClaw or Claude Code, but eventually it does. Today I want to tell you about when do you need an agent team? What are the patterns for agent teams? And how do you set up at least one of those patterns in OpenClaw to do something for you?
That's awesome. Let's do it.
First off, why would you need an agent team? When you first start working with OpenClaw or Claude Code and you set up an agent to do something for you, you might notice that the more you ask it to do, it starts to degrade the quality of its output.
Is that like context rot sort of a thing?
I think context rot is the main issue, right? It's just too much stuff in its context window and some of which conflicts with each other. I've also noticed that models they're rushed. They want to get through everything as quickly as possible. And by the way, the general guidance from all three of the main labs right now, all three of Google, OpenAI, and Anthropic, they recommend go as far as you can with a single agent. Now, in this case, you need to have a clear idea of what is the outcome that you want your agent to have. So I'll give you my example. What I really wanted was a morning briefing of what's going on in AI and tech from yesterday. And I want to know what are the main stories. I also want to know what are the signals from social media and other places. And are there any papers or articles that are becoming popular, getting shared around a lot? And I tried to get one agent to do this. And what I ended up finding was that it was not able to balance all of that material and summarizing all of that material into something that I could read in 1 to 2 minutes in the morning. And that's what I was looking for.
It was too much to jam into the context window.
That's right.
Okay.
So this is when I decided to break it up into an agent team. So what are the patterns for agent teams? The first pattern is an orchestrator team or a manager team. You have a single user prompt that goes to a manager, and then that manager assigns tasks to sub-agents. And this is actually a pretty common pattern in OpenClaw, because in OpenClaw, you have a main agent that you interact with, and you can spin off sub-agents, and you can tell your main agent to orchestrate. And that's actually what I did with mine. And I talked about this in the last episode. So this is a pretty common pattern that you'll see. But what's really interesting and what I want to focus on for today is this pattern, which is a decentralized agent pattern. And this is where you have separate agents who each can handle part of your task and hand off their part of the task to the next agent. And this is something that is interesting to set up in OpenClaw, easy to set up, and really helps with these kinds of bigger tasks that need to be broken down into sub-steps.
And I wonder whether the two can be combined, right? Where in this example, there's a triage and then it goes to sales, let's say. And then sales might have it then broken down into tasks, and each of those tasks then has a sub-agent.
Absolutely. You can definitely make this more complex. And one of the suggestions that I have is don't do that, at least not to start.
Okay.
Just the same way as the recommendation is to use one agent as long as possible until it's no longer doing its job. I would say breaking down teams into multiple layers of sub-agents also introduces issues.
Yep. Makes sense. Yeah. Why add complexity to the system?
That's right. All right. So this is how I set up the decentralized agent pattern on OpenClaw. For this, I have two agents. I have Lester, who's a researcher, and Zoe, who's the summarizer. This is a hack I saw, by the way, that I really like. Find a character from pop culture who embodies the type of characteristics that you would like your agent to have. So in this case, Lester's from Lester Freeman from The Wire, who really digs at things and pulls on threads. And Zoe is Zoe Barnes from House of Cards, who's a journalist who also, digs into the facts and pulls out the story from many facts or from a whole pile of facts. And what happens is Lester runs at 6 a.m. every day. And he does a web search across a few different tools and he puts together a daily report. And that daily report gets saved in a folder in his workspace. Then Zoe waits 50 minutes. So there's a 50-minute gap for Lester to finish his work. And at 6:50 a.m., Zoe runs. And Zoe goes and looks for the daily report from Lester. And she creates a brief out of that. And so what she does is pull the most high signal articles, social posts, and papers out of it, and creates a summary, and then of each of them, one sentence, and then a little paragraph blurb at the end with the general themes of the day. She has 10 minutes to do that. So she saves her output in her workspace in a report. And then at 7, she runs again and she grabs her report and sends me a Telegram message. So I get it on my phone, and right around the time that I'm awake, I've brushed my teeth, I'm starting to get ready, and I haven't quite gotten down to get my daughter out of bed, I can quickly scan through that and understand, hey, here's the important things from today.
This is really cool. I would love to see how, Zoe got set up and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you about how they got set up. Before I do that, I just want to note something really important here, which is this state.json. So each of these agents has their state file, and their state file essentially just says whether they are ready to send or not. For anyone who's sending me a message in Telegram, they have this state file. And this is really important because otherwise what was happening was Zoe would just send me her report that she built, and then she would send me another message with her Telegram message structure. So the state file basically flips from ready to send to not ready to send, or Telegram no reply. So if Telegram says no reply, then the main agent, whose name is Leo, does not send her message.
Is that why there's a reference to idempotency there?
That's right.
Yeah. So and for anybody who wants to learn about what it means to be idempotent, you can just YouTube search that. Does each agent have a different avatar?
I only talk to Leo. Leo is my orchestrator. But what I've set up is I can DM any agent by adding them, which is not out of the box with OpenClaw. Maybe I'll do that in a different episode.
Okay. That's neat. Man,
yeah.
This is so cool.
All right. So here's how I set up Zoe. I actually set up Zoe by having the idea and talking to my OpenClaw agent. So we basically had this back and forth about why is it that Lester, who's the research agent, is sending me these super long files every morning. I want him to do the research, but I also want him to summarize. And in that conversation with the agent, we basically realized that, you know what? It's just too much for Lester to handle. Like he's not really great at handling creating the big file. And then also after that, creating the short summary. It was context rot, like we talked about earlier. So then we talked about, okay, all right, let's just leave Lester to do the thing that he's good at. He was really good at pulling all of these signals from across the web. Let's spin up a new agent. And the second issue was also about when to send or what to send, right? It's that idempotency problem where Lester would finish one file and then would send it and then create the second file and send it. So this helps with what is the contract of what he is supposed to complete in order for his job to be done. So we went in and came up with a character name for the agent. We talked about Zoe, and basically just through discussion, with my OpenClaw agent. We built Zoe and we set up the 2 cron jobs and ran some tests. So we would trigger Lester, have him do his research, then trigger Zoe, do that manually. And then once I was happy with each of their outputs and I understood the time that was required between them, then we set up these cron jobs, which are Python automations. And that's what automates them each morning.
That's cool. I think one of the things that our audience really ought to take away here is that this was created through a conversation with an LLM, with the agent. And, rather than, having to go through the sort of hand cranking, hand typing process that we might be used to, this is a new and different way of doing things that I think is going to be the way that we generally do stuff moving forward.
Yeah, Jensen Huang recently said that OpenClaw is going to be more important than Windows.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense because, like, why click around? Why open the Windows menu when you can just talk at an agent to get what you want to get done?
That's right. So there you have it. That's how the whole thing works. It was really easy to set up. And I think the pattern here is one that any of you can take away and repeat yourself. Have agents who complete their task, save a file with the output of their task as their output contract in their workspace, and have subsequent agents pick up the file from the previous agent and use that to complete their part. And to finish off, here's an example of one of the morning briefs that I get in Telegram. So I get a high level idea, then I have the top 3 to 5 most important stories from the previous day. And like I said, I have another agent, Elliot, who I won't get into, but I get the summary from him. And finally, a what matters, 1 to 2 sentences, just to let me know what I should be thinking about.
This is great. I think everybody ought to be adding this, and I'm going to set something up like this as well. Thanks for sharing, Ilan.
Absolutely. And the last thing, we're going to share out the skill file that will help you turn your idea into an agent team. So that's going to be shared in the show notes, and you can grab that, put it into your favorite agentic tool, and you can repeat the skill for yourself.
All right. Well, thanks again, Ilan, for sharing that with us. And for those who are going to be experimenting with OpenClaw, we'd be very interested to know what you're using it for. And so, are you having success with these daily updates? What are you putting into there? And what else are you automating or just making simpler in your life?
Absolutely. We'll catch you next time.
See you next time.